Well, good morning. My name is Jessica Best. I'm the Director of Data-Driven Marketing at Barkley, an agency based in Kansas City. Love seeing where everybody's signing on from this morning. We're going to spend some time today talking a little bit about email marketing, but before I get started, I want to make sure you know a couple of housekeeping things. I'm happy to take questions via the chat window. Make sure you use the chat window and not Q&A. We'll get to some questions towards the end. And hopefully give you guys some answers and some opportunity to discuss in that chat window as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, my name is Jessica. I handle email marketing for a handful of clients here at Barkley and have been doing email marketing since way before it was cool. Yes, email marketing is cool, and we're actually going to talk about that today. Like I said, if you have any questions, I see a couple more people have just signed on. If you have any questions, be sure to post that to the chat window. Let's dig in. So one of the things that I admittedly get when I tell people that I work in email marketing is, really? You still work in email marketing? Yes. Yes, I do still work in email marketing because it still makes money, right? It still works. And I will say that one of the graphics that I love to lean on here, and this is stolen from a company called Kiss Metrics, but one of the things that I've heard that sort of resonates with me is the volume argument, right? If the volume of email that was sent in one day were equivalent to 1 cup of rice, then by comparison, the volume of all of the messaging on Facebook is equivalent to 10 grains. And Twitter is like 4 grains. This number is from 2 years ago, so it's possible that we're up to like 15 grains for Facebook. But the volume of email, the volume of content that happens through this channel really isn't going anywhere. And that's business to business, that's friend to friend, that's family members. It's still the #1 way that a lot of people share with their families. So just from a basic level, yes, email is still a thing. More importantly, though, email has unique benefits that not every marketing channel has. And that's really what today's webinar is going to be about. So the overarching sort of category of why email is a little bit different when we talk about digital marketing is that email is a direct channel. It is a medium that can send from a brand to individual consumers or clients and really can customize that experience for just about everybody. It can send it at the most relevant time for each individual recipient. We do a lot in email marketing with automation and nurture campaigns. It can personalize the content of the email. In the example with Boulevardia, we sent an email to those people who had attended in the past that had a slightly different message than those people who have never attended before, but maybe helped out with a similar event. We can track, this is one of my favorite things about email, we can track individual engagement. We have a database set up in email, and so we're able to track down to the individual's level of engagement with every piece of content. Compare that to social media, where at best you could take a look at who has liked your post manually, but there's really not a repository for understanding how engaged each individual follower or fan really is. Facebook has become, and truly most social media has become more of a broadcast channel, and email is still really data driven. It's still really a database of our customers and prospects that we can assign this type of data to. Now, my very favorite thing about email marketing, and one of the reasons why this is one of my favorite tools, is that we can automate our follow-up. Meaning, if somebody engaged with an email at 10 a.m. over and over and over again, maybe 10 a.m. is the right time for us to send to that person. We can automate that send time optimization. Or when somebody opens, or let's say doesn't open an email after a period of time, we can automatically send them a follow-up and see if a different subject line or different content would entice them a little bit better. So love the ability to do a really custom one-to-one feeling campaign in email marketing. My kicker is that email is about the only place left where we can expect to get delivered. And this borrows a little bit from direct mail. The idea that if I send it to you, there are some reasons why it might not make it to you, but it's going to be delivered to you. You have to do something with it. If I deliver something to your inbox, even if you don't want it, at worst, you could delete it without opening it, but you still had to touch it in most cases. And we'll talk about an exception there in a second. But compare that to what I would consider to be very generous delivery rates in social media. An email gets read, maybe the open rate is 20 to 25 to 30% on average. Social media posts get seen by less than 10% of your following. And this is using organic numbers. So as soon as we start talking about paying, obviously that number can go up. And email is not free either, but it's very, very different to see that we can talk about the actual delivery rate or the view rate on social as almost a broadcast channel these days. I love the question from Jeff. This read rate for email seems a bit high based on the research he's done. This entirely depends on the size and age of your list. Most of my clients are in the 18 to 23 category, and that's partially based on large list sizes. But as you get into things like higher education or nonprofit industries, 25 to 30% is not considered outrageous. The read rate data is going to be from the US. Thanks for asking that as well. There are some really great benchmark reports if anybody's interested. IBM just put out an international guide for what the average open rates are by industry. Take a peek at that. You can probably find it with a quick Google search, or ping me and I can maybe send it to you after the webinar. So last sort of threshold here is, what about consumers? Do they still want email from us? Thank goodness for my job, the answer to that has also been yes. So as recently as last year, we're seeing people say that their preference is actually to receive permission-based communications through email, as opposed to, for example, they might read their text messages on their cell phone more often than email, but they're not signing up for very many SMS deals. And part of that's the experience is a little bit clunky, and part of that is it's very personal to get something by text message or, heaven forbid, a call campaign. But email is something that I expect to be able to engage in some sort of relationship with brands, and they leave it in my inbox for when I'm ready to engage with it. This graph I love. It's a little bit older, but this one I love because it actually shows that teenage generation, even Gen Z, prefers to receive their brand communications by email, largely. Like it's not even a close margin. And this is a group of people that hasn't had to use email for much more than signing into social channels before. So yes, our consumers are looking for content from us in email as well. All right, so the last sort of nail in the coffin here is, why do I still do email marketing every day? Because I see a return on investment. The last published number from the Direct Marketing Association, and this is a couple of years old, unfortunately, is $28 return on investment for every $1 marketing dollar invested. So not the cost of goods type of thing, but $28. Now, what I found with my clients is that I'm seeing between a $20 return on investment, sometimes to a $400 return on $1 investment. And that's partially due to a larger product size. One of my clients is Spirit Airlines, for example. Do I see a great question? I'm actually going to answer questions along the way. This is super fun. Jeff is asking if we see a lift in email when opting in through text. Meaning a text to opt-in program, it sounds like. We haven't seen that just take off, but it is a lot easier for the marketer not to have to do paper forms if you're trying to retire paper forms. Let's actually come back to that at the end if we have some time. I love that question. This is an example of one of our clients, and it's kind of a genericized report here, but the email segments here are responsible for 2nd, 5th, and 7th most revenue driving for the month. So when I talk to my clients about how much time we invest or how much design resource we invest in marketing, I typically slide this in front of them and say, we definitely want to spend our time optimizing and testing and getting the right email campaigns out, because email is already a huge heavy hitter for us. I do agree that the cost per click, pay-per-click marketing at the top there is going to be one of our best acquisition campaigns. And that's actually something we can talk a little bit more about. I'm giving a series of courses through CXL in the next couple of weeks. And one of the things I'll talk about is how we tie in with paid media to get sort of new eyeballs, fresh eyeballs, and to grow our email list so that we can get a great return on investment. So I usually sort of go right into what makes email work here, but I wanted to pause because I feel like we've got a good variety of people on any kind of webinar like this. And I usually get somebody who's like, well, I don't have e-commerce, so don't show me that Google Analytics chart because I can't do that with mine. So of course, proving return on investment is easiest when you're an e-commerce organization and you can basically look at your revenue from email in Google Analytics or whatever your analytics software is. However, did you know that you can also assign a value to certain actions on your website? For example, Big Brothers Big Sisters is one of the organizations I've had the pleasure of working with. And we've decided that anytime somebody clicks on donate clothing or find a drop-off location to donate clothing, that the average clothing donation has a certain value. So when somebody clicks on that to find a location, we've assigned that a revenue value in Google Analytics. So now that plus how about a form to become a big, that has value, right? Some of these other things, in the case of business to business, we can assign a value to a lead form because we believe that a new qualified lead is worth $100, and every 10 leads that we get online, maybe 1 or 2 are going to be qualified. So we start to do a little math, and we can assign a value to that lead form being completed. Excellent, because now your Google Analytics revenue report looks exactly like an e-commerce site. Fun fact, really fun stuff to dig into, and I know that there are other CXL instructors that have actually talked about stuff like that. Okay, let's say that's not possible either. Let's say you are fully business to business and all of your sales data is happening offline. First, I would say make sure you're putting lead forms on your site. So hopefully this is not the case. But taking a look at your campaigns in your CRM system, let's say you use Dynamics or Salesforce. Here's a look at what a campaign value might look like based on the closed won business in your CRM and what percent of that closed won business had some association with this campaign. Now there's a big watch out here. Email typically is a good way to continue or nurture a conversation. It's not a good way to acquire a new person because you can't talk to them until you have their email address anyway. And it's not always the reason that somebody closes a large business-to-business sale or even a long lead time sale that's business to consumer. Typically, there's a personal selling component that really kind of closes that person or takes them through to the end. However, we have seen consistently that those people who have signed up to be subscribers are more likely to close or donate at a higher level than those people who aren't on our email list at all, who we haven't been nurturing with sort of this content-focused stuff. A great example of that is I was at a conference called NEO Summit by a company called Next After last year, and they have a great case study of they split test their list, and half of the audience got newsletters and half of the audience got appeals only. So both groups got an appeal, but half of the list got content also. And those people that were getting newsletter content actually gave almost twice as much as the people who were just seeing the appeals emails. Really fascinating case study, and I can send that to you guys as well. All right, so campaigns associated with closed business in your CRM. Best use case for this is if you can see a correlation, meaning this campaign was associated with $20,000 in sales, and this campaign, let's say newsletters and promotional offers. Newsletters are associated with 80% of our business, and the promotions campaigns are associated with 60% of our business. That means we've got actually a tool in the newsletter campaigns that maybe we're not even optimizing all the way yet. So kind of a comparison tool more than it is a straight return on investment tool at that point. Another way that you can do that, and this is getting to that 80% number as well, is if you don't have a CRM or you don't have access or you're not sure how to do it, you can actually just take a crosstab of all of your new customers for the year and then a crosstab of who of those or an export of who of those were on your email lists and got different types of email for the year. So kind of another way of getting to that, 80% of our new business this year got newsletters before they closed. It's a strong indicator. It's not a one-to-one correlation. It's not a one-to-one causation, I should say. It's a correlation, but it can be something that you learn from. And then this is the heavy hitter. This is one that not everybody's going to be able to do, but one of the things one of my clients is doing right now is they've moved from just an email subscriber to a loyalty program. And that is an insider perks program where every dollar you spend gets you points or something like that. So now every time somebody buys something, let's say you have a retail location, you can actually tie that back to their email address because you're asking them to identify themselves in an offline situation. This is especially important for retail because if you buy something in store, sometimes we don't know. If you even get our emails, we don't know who you are. It's sort of a credit card-based transaction versus an email-based transaction. Getting a loyalty program in place can be one of the ways to sew that data back together. All right, lots more on that when we get into the full-length coursework, but I wanted to give you guys some quick hits and tools on how you could actually track whether your email marketing is working for you. So what works? What makes really good email marketing? First, we have to take advantage of what email is uniquely good at. Social media is really good at a one-click share, right? That's really tough to overcome. On Twitter, you can literally hit retweet and your entire audience, if they're online, can see that post from another brand or another poster. In email, we've got all of those benefits of being a data-based or a direct marketing channel. So let's talk about how to take advantage of those. First, data is maybe my favorite word. We should have had a Pee Wee Herman word of the day. Like when I say data, everybody scream. I can hear you screaming from here. Email can use data to personalize emails. And probably the most common way that people personalize their emails is first name, this offer is special for you. And that's okay. That's a great start. People love seeing their name in writing, so it actually still works, believe it or not. One step above that is actually an example from a client of mine, Spirit Airlines. They do a quarterly email to entice people to apply for their Spirit MasterCard, where every dollar you spend on the MasterCard gets you points to fly places. So in this case, we know things about the person who's flying. We know things about the email address because they require email address in their transaction. So we're going to send this offer. First of all, we only send this offer to people who have flown because it seems really unlikely that someone who's never flown Spirit is going to buy a MasterCard. However, because we know that you've flown, we also know your last destination. So in this example, we took our control headline, which is take advantage of this special offer from Spirit Airlines, and we put it up against a fly back to the city you were just in, the most recent place that you've gone, with this special offer. Now, if you're business to business, like fly back to, I was just in Pittsburgh, fly back to Pittsburgh for another business trip, that's sort of medium exciting. But for the most part, Spirit is a weekend and vacation trip airline, especially for families because it's got such a great price. So fly back to Orlando to go back to or Universal Studios, that is an enticing offer. And so unsurprisingly, the open rate was almost a 50% lift over the control. And if you carry that all the way through, we didn't see a 50% increase in conversions to application, but the actual conversion rate did see a 15% jump. So super fun. Email can send unique content to each recipient. And this is also a Spirit Airlines example. This is something that they're in the process of rolling out right now. The idea here is that we are checking to see if you've flown either recently, like in the last year, or ever. And if you've never flown Spirit Airlines, you will be surprised to find that their super low cost tickets are partially because they take things out of that price tag. They call it unbundled. So when you get to the airport, if you need to print your boarding pass, it'll cost you. If you want water on the plane, it'll cost you. So instead of feeling nickel and dimed when they get to the airport, we're going to add an educational series to these people who have not flown in a while so that we can hopefully tell them how to get the best deal. And that's things like showing the check-in reminder and telling them to book their bags to make sure that we're booking our bags ahead of the time that we arrive at the airport so that we don't get charged too much at the airport. Really quickly on one of the panelists' questions, do you have any current data? The data from 2014 is rather old. I agree, the DMA stopped doing that research. So my number, the 20% return or $20 return on investment per every $1 invested, that's from the last year. That's from my own client data. Thanks for asking. Another example of unique content to each recipient. So this is something that we can do to send almost on a timed basis, right? This is data to use, set the timing of an email. On the left, you've got water.org sends you a birthday card, which is really fun. We don't take birthdays for granted. And we want to know when your birthday is so that we can send you a birthday card. On the right-hand side, we've got, they've actually got a campaign where they ask donors to host a fundraiser for them. So if you've hosted a fundraiser, they actually have a wait period where after a certain amount of time, they say, wasn't that fun? Wouldn't you like to do it again? One quick note on that, one of the things that I noticed when I was looking at their campaigns, they asked for somebody to start a new fundraiser 90 days after their last fundraiser ended. That's fine, but I asked, how often do people usually host fundraisers for water.org? And their answer was, usually once a year on their birthday. So we're asking for something quite a bit more often than people are doing it naturally. That's one of those things where you want to make sure you're looking at your sort of aggregate data and understanding the customer's actual journey with you as a brand. Yes, Jeff, this would be a drip campaign, nurture campaign, automated campaign. The industry kind of uses a lot of different names for that. Email is also a great medium for A/B testing. So with a conversion-driven audience, this is a really great tool for us to do things like subject line testing, right? What is the best, most enticing copy that is going to get some sort of engagement, an open, a click, a purchase, things like that. And it's good for a couple of reasons. One, this is a screenshot from HubSpot. I can literally sit in HubSpot and click refresh and watch people open my campaigns. So I actually get really quick results if I need to. I can have the results of a split test in email in about a day. And that's because we're sending to the entire batch of our list. When we do split tests on landing pages, typically we have to give that time to cook, right? We have to give enough traffic to those landing pages that we can see the results of it. So this is kind of a set database, a sort of segment that's waiting for us to send campaigns to. That kind of goes to the captive audience as well. The other thing is that email can have a really big impact. So small changes can actually have a pretty big impact because the return on investment there is so big. The example that I usually throw back to, and this is another old example, so don't give me too hard a time on that, but way back to the 2008 presidential campaign for Obama, they had 20 different subject lines that they tested in email before rolling out the winner. The difference between how much the winner would have made in donations versus how much the worst performer would have made in donations was $2 million. $2.4 million compared to $400,000. So it's potential that we can have a really big impact here when we have a really good sized audience. Good question. So we have the question, can copy that works in email always be used in paid campaigns? Does it work? The answer, of course, is no, it doesn't always work. But it is at least a good indicator. So always be testing in your own channels. Always be testing in paid campaign channels as well. But if you've got an audience, a captive audience of one of my clients, for example, has 10 million records, that is a great way to get an indicator early on. Maybe you cull down your list of copy from 2 million or 20 options to 5 options or to 2 options. Because remember that when we're A/B testing, just testing copy isn't always the end game. In email, if we test copy and one performs better than the other, I still don't know what I'm going to write for my next subject line. What we are getting is a sense of which mechanism works. Does urgency work better than fear-based copy? That type of thing. Good question. For Gary, we are going to have a couple of examples of more personal style. Let me see if I don't get to enough examples here, let's connect via chat afterwards. To Jeff's question on multivariate testing, I actually would recommend against that in email unless you really have a good-sized audience. Tends to be a little bit more complicated to execute in a database style because you want to cross-check every single variation. Most of the time, it's not necessary. We can do back-to-back split tests and do sort of a progressive testing setup on that instead. Email also has something called a pre-header, and I think some of you may have heard of this. I feel like I've been preaching this for the last few years, but as opposed to just a headline, like a subject line, we also have a pre-header. We have a little snippet of the first text that's in the actual body of the email, and we can use both of these pieces. The subject line and header, pre-header are sort of an interesting, unique email proposition. It's a little bit like the envelope on an old direct mail piece, not old, but historically what direct mail would have done on the envelope. That's kind of what we're doing on the from name, subject line, and pre-header. So make sure that you know what your pre-headers are and that you're intentionally setting this content for your emails. A couple of good examples here from a client of ours. Here's a watch out, and I'm going to come back to questions in a little bit, but I want to make sure that we get through some of this stuff here. I'll do questions again at the end. This is a watch out for us. In this case, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, the subject line is "You did it," and the pre-header is "Remove yourself from this mailing." Ouch. Where is that coming from? Look at all this text that's in the body of the email. You did it. Thanks for helping Summer Bowl for Kids' sake. Unfortunately, that email is entirely made out of an image. And the image stuff doesn't get pulled into the subject line or into the pre-header. So the only text in their entire email is the unsubscribe link at the bottom. Now I'm working with Big Brothers Big Sisters, so hopefully they won't do this anymore. But that is one thing that we wanted to make sure to point out is this is one of those watch outs, which takes us into part 2. When doing email marketing, it's possible that we've got people from a lot of different channels on the webinar today. Make sure to watch out for those things that only email even has to worry about. One being that pre-header area, not using that right, and making sure that you've got a balance of image to text. So one reason to blend image to text is because otherwise there's no text to draw into the pre-header, which you just saw. The other one is this. This is get outdoor dining and entertaining essentials for the summer, view in browser. Unfortunately, I have to click view in browser because the entire email is made out of an image. This is what the email actually looks like. Sorry if anyone's on from IKEA, but this is an example I like to pick on. It's a beautiful email, but there are a couple of things that really stand out to me here. One, 25% of our audience is going to have images turned off by default, and that includes some versions of Outlook and some versions of Android on mobile. So for 25% of our audience, they literally just saw this. Oops. The other thing to note here is now that we're really in a mobile-driven world, especially on the retail side, these emails, when they get sized down to a 300 pixel width, that font is going to be impossible to read once resized. So instead, this is a client of ours, Dairy Queen. We do a really big, juicy image at the header, but then the entire rest of the email is actually text. This is another brand example, not quite a text example like we were talking about for Gary, but I'm going to see if I can move my chat window here so I can see you all. The header, the subhead, the body copy, and even the button is actually text. So if images are turned off, unfortunately, you don't get to see the cookie blizzard, which is delicious. But you do get to see almost the entire content of this email, which is really great. We make sure that we're not missing out on anybody. All right, Gary, this is the one I promised you. If I don't come up with any other examples, I'll send you some after the webinar. This is a company called AROG. AROG offers legal insurance. It actually works a lot like health insurance. You pay a small premium each month, like 20 bucks. And then if you end up in a situation where you need a lawyer, you pay a deductible and you are hooked up with a lawyer for the right area. Let's say an adoption would be a really good example. Or my husband and I just got our will and trust done, end of life planning, things like that. All of that is stuff that can be covered. They actually have a very personal selling model. And so this is one of the more graphic examples for them. This is still a branded headline and a branded sort of template. They do have some versions of this that are almost entirely text and that are signed off on by your representative. In the case of business-to-business sales, and honestly, in the case of some nonprofit, we have seen text emails do better, partially because it represents the personal outreach of that person a little bit better. There are definitely situations where that works. I would say Dairy Queen doesn't have any examples of that. A lot of brands, it really doesn't make sense to send from a sales rep or from a customer service rep or an account person. In this case, we do have some examples of where AROG is putting out content. Their content marketing stuff all comes from the brand. It's all from branded templates. I will come back to questions at the end. Hang in there with me. Really quickly, I would be remiss if I would not talk about the ugly, ugly word, deliverability. Unfortunately, in email marketing, I hope I'm not telling anybody like the Easter Bunny doesn't exist right now, but just because you sent it out does not mean it has to land in the recipient's inbox. We all kind of know the junk folder, hopefully. Hopefully you're not putting any of our clients' emails in the junk folder, but the consumer defines junk as, I don't want this, or sometimes, I didn't sign up for this. That's a really easy way, a really quick way to get that spam complaint button clicked on you. And unfortunately, that's not even the worst of it. So there's the inbox, there's the junk or spam folder, and then there's what we call missing. This is a company called Return Path, and this is their numbers from about halfway through last year. They'll probably put another one out here in the next couple of months. They estimate that in the US, they do have global numbers for whoever was asking about global before, and I can share that with you. They do have the estimate at 77%. So for those people who are actually email marketers, this is not like Russian pharmaceutical spam ads that I still can't figure out. A valid email marketing, 77% makes it to the inbox, another 8% goes to the junk folder, and then 16% goes missing. This isn't a bounce. This just means that the inbox provider, let's say Yahoo, thought you were so spammy that they stopped even delivering you to the spam folder and just threw away the rest of your emails. And they don't have to report that back to you. This is unique to email. None of my pals in social media have to deal with this, and it is absolutely a problem, especially if you don't know that it's happening to you. So the first step here is just to understand what your inbox placement is. A lot of email platforms integrate Return Path's toolset or a similar toolset and would be able to do some testing on this for you. This is the no man's land, right? This is the spam folder. Even in spam, unfortunately, that's not going to get you a very high read rate. So that missing percent has no chance of opening. Spam folder also doesn't have a chance of opening, unfortunately, as well. What we're trying to do here is make sure that we not only land in the inbox, but that we are welcome in the inbox, because the people that can click "this is spam" or that can send you to the junk folder. Unfortunately, they don't care if you're not able to do your job very well. So this is something we have to keep an eye out for. And in that vein, we want to make sure that everybody that's on our list expects to get email content from us, expects to get our email messages. So that means things like making sure that people opt in to get our emails. If you pick up a business card at a trade show, that's okay. They're giving you your contact information. Certainly your salespeople can follow up with that person. Where it gets to be not okay, let's say you're a member of an organization that has a member roster. You cannot take that member roster and automatically upload it into your entire system and start sending them marketing messages. That is, first of all, borderline harvesting and against the law, but also everybody on that list is going to mark you as spam. So permission-based marketing is something that's really key in email marketing that really not a lot of other channels have to deal with. Okay, I made it through the sort of 5 basic things I wanted to cover. Let's hit a couple more questions here before we wrap up, and I will be around the Conversion XL has a Facebook group for our coursework that starts next week, and I'll be around to answer some questions there too. So a couple of quick questions. We ended up with, what's the ideal ratio of image to text? Is it based on size, meaning in kilobytes, or length? How do some big brands get away with image-only emails? Boy, Jerry, if I could answer that, I would never have to answer that question to my clients again. The truth is they may not be. They may not be making it past spam filters. They may not be getting the highest return on investment they can because some portion of their list sees nothing. However, the idea of the size versus length, what we've actually seen, there's an organization called Email on Acid that has run an actual test on this. They've found that if you have at least 500 characters of true text in your email, that balance sort of takes care of itself. We used to say about 50 to 50, but again, that was almost like, is it visually 50 to 50 or like kilobyte size? Images are so much bigger than text. How would you even measure that? I think what they're looking for, I think what junk folders are looking for is any sort of indication that you have content they are able to read and score on a spam scale. Another quick question here, is there a way to minimize that missing rate? There is. We will talk so much more about that in the coursework, and I hate to throw you to the coursework, but that is an 8-hour conversation that we could cull down to maybe 60 seconds or 60 minutes of good tips. The best indication I can tell you is at least know what your inbox placement is. There's some really good resources out there from a company called Return Path. They're the ones that did the research, or 250 OK. 250 OK. They'll have some sort of indicators, some tests that you can buy to see if this is something that's happening to you. If you know that this is a problem for you, then absolutely time to start talking about things like the type of content you're sending, how people get on your list or off your list, things like that. How do you suggest working with GDPR laws? So you already know that permission is going to be my thing, right? Again, a way, 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 way bigger topic than we can address in a question and answer session. But at the very basic level, if you are doing permission-based email marketing and you're tracking and logging that permission in your system, meaning your email form signs up automatically to your email platform and they have the time and date stamp on that, that is your best starting point to make sure that you're compliant. The laws in the US are the lowest bar of any country in the entire planet. And unfortunately, US advertisers have gotten really used to that low bar. When we start talking about CASL in Canada or GDPR in the EU, that's when it's going to start to be, it's really dealer's choice. It's really the recipients who choose whether or not to be on your list. And it's best to abide by that. Last one here, we've got last click conversion or assisted conversion. What's the best attribution model for email? There's no one right answer to that. And the biggest reason for that is there's a very big difference between Spirit Airlines that sells entirely online and can attribute a purchase to the email that got that person to the website. It's a very quick purchase. It's done entirely online, and all of that session is tracked back to that email. On the other hand, ROG Legal is definitely not an e-commerce or quick conversion, and that's more of an assisted conversion at that point. There are lots of models about what percent attribution that should get in email marketing. For ROG Legal, they're more doing the what percent of our sales were assisted by email, as opposed to can we attribute dollars return on investment for this channel. All right, gang, I think I'm at my time. So unfortunately, I'm going to wrap up, but I am going to stay on the Facebook page, and feel free to connect. If you have any questions I didn't get to, throw them in chat and I'll try to stay on it just a little bit longer. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.